What's going on, guys? In this video, we're going to create a new data repository in our Golang application in order to use Amazon DynamoDB as the database. Okay, what is Amazon DynamoDB? DynamoDB is a key value and document NoSQL database. It's a fully managed, multi-region, multi-master, durable database with built-in security, backup and restore, and in-memory caching. Companies like Lyft, Airbnb, Samsung, and Toyota are currently using DynamoDB to support their mission-critical workloads. And DynamoDB organizes data as tables, and each table contains several items or rows, and each item has keys and attributes or columns. So in order to be able to use DynamoDB from our Golang application, we need to set up the AWS SDK for Golang. And in order to do that, we need to follow some steps. So first, we need to create a new user in our AWS account from IAM. IAM is where you set up all the permissions, the users, the groups, and the policies. You need to generate the access keys for that user. The AWS SDK for Golang will load those credentials from the credentials file. And here is an example of a credential files that includes the access key ID and the secret access key. The AWS SDK for Golang will load the region from the shared configuration file that is on the config file, and this is the sample, right? Here we have the default region. In this case is US East 1 or North Virginia. Next, we need to create a posts table in DynamoDB, and this is going to be the ARN or Amazon resource name that includes the service, in this case DynamoDB, the region, the account number, and then the identifier that in this case for DynamoDB is table / and the name of the table. We need to create a group, let's call it REST API developers, and then we need to create a policy that is going to be this one, and we need to attach that policy to the group. Here we are allowing to execute these actions, put item, get item, and scan the table on this resource. This is the Amazon resource name for the table. Then we need to assign that group that we created to the new user. And finally, we need to get the AWS SDK libraries for Golang. We need to execute go get and the URL that is github.com/AWS/AWS SDK go. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Remember to download the Golang cheat sheet from pragmaticreviews.com. There is a link in the description below. And let's get started. Okay, this is my AWS account. So first, I'm going to enter to the IAM service where we are going to set up all the permissions that we need to access the DynamoDB from the application. And I'm going to create a new user here. And I'm going to call it pragmatic. And I'm going to allow pragmatic access. So by default, AWS is going to generate this access key and the secret access key. So I will be able to set up that on my computer on the credentials file and then access the AWS SDK or the AWS API. Okay, so permissions. I'm going to skip this. I'm going to create the user, and this is going to generate these credentials, the access key ID and the secret access key. I'm going to download those credentials here. I'm going to close this. And okay, and now I'm going to show you the policy that I already created. The policy is posts table policy, this one. And what I'm doing here is I'm allowing to execute these actions, put item, get item, and scan on this resource that is the DynamoDB table that we are going to create in just a minute. Okay, let's go back. I'm going to create a group. I'm going to call it Golang developers. And I'm going to attach that policy, posts, this one, to this group. I'm going to create a group. And now let's go to the group, Golang developers, and I'm going to add this pragmatic user that I just created. So now this user, if we go to the users view here, this user pragmatic is part of the Golang developers group, and now is able to access this table and execute these actions: put item, get item, and scan. Okay, now let's go to DynamoDB. Dynamo. Okay, and let's create a new table there. Okay, create table, and we are going to call it posts, like that. And the identifier is going to be a number. That's what we are using in the application. Remember that this is a simple structure that we are using for the posts. They have an identifier, which column name is ID, a title, and a text. Really simple. So let's click here on create. And in just a few seconds, it's going to create the posts table for us. And that's pretty much all we need. So we are going to start adding new records here, or new rows here to this table. So let's move on to the IDE and let's start working on the DynamoDB repository. Okay, first we need to install the AWS SDK libraries for Golang, and we need to run go get github.com/AWS hyphen SDK hyphen go, like that. And that will install the libraries. Our application allows us to swap between different databases. We already created some implementations for this interface, for this post repository interface. We created an implementation for Firestore, another for SQLite, but we can also create different implementations for Mongo, MySQL. And in this case, I started working on the DynamoDB implementation here. I'm going to close this. These are the AWS SDK libraries for Golang, and these are the packages that we are going to use in our repo. I already created a structure. I created this constructor function that is going to return this interface. And also I created this private function that is going to return a DynamoDB client. And this is pretty much a boilerplate that returns a new session by picking up these two files, the credentials and the config files from the local environment. And this line is returning basically a new client. If we go there, we're going to see that this creates a new instance of the DynamoDB client with a session. So, and here are some examples. This is pretty well documented, so you can check it out. Okay, let's close this. I'm going to implement a couple of functions. So I added some comments here, and I'm going to start working on these functions. So let's start working on the save function, and I'm going to create a new variable to keep the DynamoDB client. So I'm going to call it DynamoDB client, and here I'm going to call this private function that is the create DynamoDB client, this one. Okay, next we need to transform the post that we receive here as a parameter for the save function into the attribute value object. That is the one that we need to use in order to interact with the DynamoDB SDK. So here we need to use DynamoDB attribute that Marshall map, and we need to pass the post. So this is going to transform the post to this map, where the key is going to be a string and the value is going to be a reference or a pointer to the attribute value object. This is going to return either the attribute value or an error. And as usual, we need to handle this error. I guess I need to add, need to remove the package because I didn't use it before. So I need to add that package here. And it's gonna be / DynamoDB attribute here, like this. Now we should be fine, Okay, now I'm going to handle the error. If error is not nil, I'm going to return the error, nil, and the error, like that. And if we don't get any errors, I'm going to create a new item. And this is going to be DynamoDB.put item input, like this. And here we need to pass the item. That's going to be this attribute value that we created here, like this. And we need to pass the table name that I assign here in the constructor function, here in the table name attribute of the DynamoDB repo structure. So here I need to use repo that table name. I need to use a function here from AWS, that is AWS string, like that. So I need to cast that value to that type so I can use it as part of this item input. I need to also import that package. So this is like this, github.com /AWS SDK go /AWS, like that. And I should be good to go. Okay. And now we need to save this item. And here we need to use DynamoDB client. Here is where we use this client, finally. And here we need to call the put item function. And we need to pass the item, that is this one, that we created on line 46. Okay, and again, I need to handle the error. I'm going to copy this. So that's it for the save function. Now I'm going to move on to the find all function. So here I need to get a new DynamoDB client. So I'm going to grab this. We're going to use the same variable here. Now we need to build the query input parameters. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it params. And I'm going to assign this function, that is the scan input function from the DynamoDB SDK. So this is going to be DynamoDB.scan input. And here we can pass different filters, but in this case, we are just getting all the existing posts. So I'm just going to pass the table name in this case. Table name, and here I'm going to use this. And that's all I need in this case. Okay, and here I need to actually call the DynamoDB API or the query API. And here I need to use the client. So it's going to be DynamoDB client dot scan. That's the function that we need to call. And we need to pass the params here. And here I'm going to assign a result and the error in case we get any errors when calling this function. And as usual, I'm going to handle this error. I'm going to grab this from here. And if I get any errors, I'm going to return nil as a result. And I'm going to return the error to be handled in this case by the service. Remember that we have the server that go. This is the entry point of our application. Then we have the controller is going to call the service is going to call the repository. Great, let's go back. And here we need to get this result, iterate that result, and create a posts array. That is actually this one. And this is the array that we need to return from this function. Okay, so it's going to be var posts. This is going to be entity.post. This is the struct that we are using. And I'm going to initialize this array as an empty array, like this. So I'm going to iterate over the items of this result that we get here by using the range keyword. And here I'm going to use result.items. And here I'm going to create a new post, entity.post. And here I'm going to marshal the item that is part of this collection here into this post that we are using here. So it's going to be DynamoDB attribute that unmarshal map, this one. And here I'm going to pass the element, and I'm going to pass a reference to the post variable. And here I'm going to handle the error again. So I need to assign it here in case I get any errors. I need to grab this from here. And if I don't get any errors, here I'm going to panic directly. And if everything goes well, I'm going to append the last post to the posts array. So it's going to be append. The first argument is going to be the array posts, and the second argument is going to be the post that I am mapping here. And here I need to return the array posts and nil, because we shouldn't have any errors at this point. We have the save function, we have the final function, and okay, now we can implement the next one that is going to be the find by ID. So we are going to pass an identifier of the post to this function, and it's going to return the post that has that identifier. Okay, here as usual, I'm going to assign the DynamoDB client like this. I'm going to paste this here. And here I need to use the get item from the DynamoDB client. So it's going to be DynamoDB client. I need to use this. That get item. Sorry, this is a public function. Remember, public functions, the first letter is uppercase, and private functions, the first letter is lowercase. So this is going to be uppercase get item. Okay, and here we need to use the DynamoDB that get item input like this. And here we need to pass two arguments. We need to pass the table name the same way that we are doing here. Like this. And we need to pass the identifier. That in this case, we need to pass this as the key for this function. And it's going to be a map where we have a string as the key. And we have a DynamoDB attribute value as the value for this map. Actually, a pointer to that. So it's going to be DynamoDB that attribute value. Sorry, this is like this. And here we need to pass the ID. This is the field that is the name of the identifier. And here we need to pass the identifier that we are passing here to the function as a parameter. Okay, so this is n, and this is AWS.string, and this is the ID, that is this argument. And this is going to return either a result or an error. So we need to handle the error as usual. So I'm going to copy this. So in this case, I'm going to return nil and the error. So the service layer is going to handle that error. And now we need to map the result to a post. So we need to do something pretty similar to what we are doing here. So I'm going to grab this. And here we need to replace this for result that item, like this, because result is the variable that we are assigning to the value that we get from here. And here we need to return a reference to the post and nil, because at this point we don't have any errors. Okay, so let's test this. So let's go to server.go, and here I am creating this repository. I'm using the constructor function that I created, where we are passing posts as the table name. If we go back to AWS, this is the name that we are using for the table, and we are passing that repository to the service. So let's run this. Go run, go. Now it's running. Let's go to Postman. Let's run a get operation. We should not get any results. Yes, we get an empty array. So let's create a new post. Okay, and now if we go to AWS and we refresh this, we should see that post here. Okay, we have that element. And let's create another one. And if I go back to the DynamoDB console and I refresh again, yeah, I should see the two posts that I created. And if we execute the get operation, that is going to be the final function that we implemented in the repository. We should get the two elements. Yeah. And now I'm going to execute the get element by ID. So I'm going to execute the get operation over the post's resource, and I'm going to pass, for example, this identifier, and I should get the post with title, title2, and text, text2. So I'm going to do that. And let's run this, and yes, I get the data that I expected. So that's pretty much all I have for today. Remember to download the Golang cheat sheet. There is a link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.